This story is titled, My Fiancée Screamed That I Wasn't Worthy of Her and Dumped Me During a Family Gathering, so I quietly packed her things. The next day, she was begging for forgiveness. Hey Reddit, my name is Marcus, and I'm 27 years old. I've been running my own electrical business for about 6 years now. It's nothing too fancy, but it pays the bills and then some. I actually managed to buy my own house and paid it off completely just last year. It's a modest 3-bedroom place in a decent neighborhood, but it's mine. I've always believed in working hard and minding my own business. That's just how I was raised. About 2 years ago, I was at a house party when I spotted Victoria across the room. She was 26, blonde, with this cute smile, laughing at something her friend had said. Now, it wasn't just that she was attractive. There were plenty of attractive women at that party. What really made her stand out was the way she seemed genuinely happy. She wasn't performing for social media or trying to impress anyone around her. There was something authentic about her joy that drew me in immediately. We ended up talking by the kitchen counter for something like 3 hours straight. I found out she worked doing nails at this upscale salon called Glamour Studio, some bougie name like that. You know the type of place I'm talking about, where rich suburban wives pay $90 to get little flowers painted on their fingernails. Despite the fancy clientele, Victoria seemed down to earth about her work. What I really liked about Victoria was that she didn't get weird when I told her what I do for a living. You'd be surprised how many women's eyes just glaze over when you say electrician instead of marketing manager or some office job. But Victoria actually seemed interested in what I did. She asked thoughtful questions about the business, whether I enjoyed working for myself, what the challenges were. None of that fake interested stuff either. She was genuinely curious about my life and my work. After about 9 months of dating, it made sense for her to move in with me. Her lease was ending anyway, and she was practically living at my place most nights. Most of her stuff was already there, so it seemed like the natural next step in our relationship. Now here's where I probably should have paid more attention to the details, but hindsight is 20/20, right? When I say she moved in, I mean she showed up with exactly 2 suitcases of clothes, a couple of decorative pillows, some scented candles, and 4 houseplants. That was literally it. My place was already completely furnished because I'd been living there for 4 years at that point. I'd spent years getting everything just how I wanted it, the furniture, the layout, the whole setup. So basically, she moved into a fully furnished house and contributed some throw pillows and greenery. At the time, I thought it was sweet. She was making the space ours with her little feminine touches, adding some personality to what had been a pretty bachelor-oriented environment. Looking back now, that should have been red flag number 1, that she was used to other people providing everything while she just existed and added decorative elements. The first year and a half of living together was actually pretty solid. Sure, we had the usual couple stuff that everyone deals with. She'd leave dishes in the sink longer than I'd like, and I'd forget to put the toilet seat down. Normal relationship things that didn't make me question whether we were compatible or anything like that. These were just minor adjustments that come with sharing space with someone. Victoria wasn't exactly what you'd call domestic, though. I'd come home from job sites to find the place looking like a tornado had hit it. But I figured we were both working full-time, so I didn't make a big deal about it. I started doing most of the cooking because she'd either burn whatever she was making or just order takeout every single night. Same situation with the cleaning. I'd end up doing the dishes, laundry, bathroom maintenance, all that household stuff. Honestly, it didn't really bother me at first. I'm used to taking care of my own space, and I didn't want to stress her out by nagging about household responsibilities. Plus, she was working full-time at the salon too, so it seemed fair that I'd pick up the slack at home. I told myself we were a team, and teams support each other where needed. But here's where things started getting problematic. When I'd gently suggest that maybe she could help out around the house a bit more, she'd act like I was asking her to build a rocket ship from scratch. "I'm going through a really hard time right now, Marcus," she'd say with this wounded expression. Or she'd hit me with, "I need to focus on my mental health," and my personal favorite, "I thought you wanted me to take care of myself first." Taking care of herself apparently meant doing absolutely nothing productive while I handled everything else. And I mean everything. Cooking, cleaning, laundry, yard work, paying all the bills, maintaining the house. I was basically running a full household while she treated the place like her personal resort. She'd spend her evenings watching TV or scrolling through social media, while I dealt with the mundane realities of adult life. Looking back now, I can see she was already testing boundaries during this period. She was seeing how much she could get away with before I said something. figuring out how much I'd do for her while she contributed the bare minimum. But at the time, I just thought I was being a good boyfriend. I told myself that relationships require compromise, and that maybe she just had different standards for cleanliness and organization. Then, about 4 months ago, everything changed dramatically. Victoria decided she needed a break from work. Just like that, completely out of nowhere. She told her boss at the salon that she was taking indefinite time off to recharge her batteries and explore new opportunities. When she first mentioned it, I thought she meant like a week or two, maybe a month at most. Everyone needs a break sometimes, right? The salon business can be genuinely draining. Dealing with demanding clients all day, being on your feet for hours, breathing in chemical smells from all the products. I figured she'd decompress for a bit and then get back to it. 4 months later, and she's still on this magical sabbatical. Let me tell you, she's really committed to the break lifestyle we're talking about here. Sleeping until noon every single day, spending entire afternoons binge-watching reality TV shows, scrolling through TikTok and Instagram like it's her full-time job. The transformation was remarkable. She went from someone who at least had a work schedule to someone with absolutely zero structure or responsibility in her life. Her job search was the biggest joke of all, and I use the term job search very loosely here. What she was actually doing was scrolling through job postings for maybe an hour a week, then finding elaborate reasons why each position wasn't good enough for her. The excuses were honestly impressive in their creativity and complete disconnect from reality. "This one's too far from the house," she'd say about a salon that was literally 20 minutes away, the same distance as her previous job. "This one doesn't pay enough," she'd complain about positions that actually offered more than she was making at her old salon. "The reviews online are terrible," she'd declare about places that had solid 4-star ratings. And my absolute favorite, the vibe just doesn't feel right about jobs she'd never even applied for, much less visited in person. But the excuse that really took the cake was when she found a position at a really nice salon downtown. Better location, better clientele, and they even offered chair rental opportunities, which meant significantly more earning potential. Her reason for not applying? They required Saturday hours, and weekends are our time together. Our time together, which consisted of me doing household chores while she watched television and scrolled through her phone. Meanwhile, I'm picking up extra work to cover her share of all our expenses. I started taking on weekend jobs whenever I could get them, saying yes to those emergency calls that come in at weird hours, basically accepting anything that would bring in additional money. I was exhausted all the time, but I kept telling myself this was temporary. That's what partners do, right? Support each other through tough times? I convinced myself that this was just a rough patch and that she'd eventually get back on her feet. The really messed up part was how she'd act like this entire arrangement was completely normal. She never once thanked me for covering her expenses or acknowledged that I was doing everything around the house. If anything, she seemed to think I should be grateful that she was letting me take care of her. The entitlement was absolutely staggering when I look back on it now. I would come home around 7 p.m. covered in dust and wire clippings from whatever job site I'd been working at. And there she'd be, camped out on my couch in the exact same spot where I'd left her that morning. "Hey babe, how was work?" she'd ask, without even looking up from her phone, like she was doing me some huge favor by acknowledging that I existed. The routine became so predictable it was almost comical, except it wasn't funny when I was living it. When I'd hint that maybe it was time to start looking for work more seriously, she'd flip it back on me every single time. "I thought you wanted me to be happy," she'd say, with this wounded expression that was clearly designed to make me feel guilty. Or she'd hit me with the classic manipulation. "Do you want me to just take any job and be miserable? Is that what would make you happy?" "No, Victoria, what would make me happy is if you contributed literally anything to this relationship besides taking up space on my couch." But I kept telling myself this was temporary, that eventually she'd get bored of doing nothing and want to get back to work. I convinced myself that she was just going through something difficult and needed my support to get through it. I had no idea how much worse things were about to get. So Victoria's 26th birthday was coming up in late October, and she'd been dropping hints for weeks about wanting to do something really special this year. Not just dinner and a movie or some low-key celebration like we'd done before. She wanted a full-blown party with friends, family, decorations, the whole production. The way she talked about it, you'd think she was turning 16 instead of 26. Now normally, I'm not big on throwing parties, I'm more of a grill some burgers and watch the game kind of guy. Large social gatherings aren't really my thing, and I prefer intimate celebrations. But I figured after 4 months of supporting her while she lived like a queen, Maybe a nice birthday party would remind her of what we had together and show her that I cared about making her happy. Plus, she'd been pretty down about the whole job situation, or at least pretending to be. So I thought this might cheer her up and give her something positive to focus on. Looking back now, that was a big mistake. I decided to go all out for this party. I took a Friday off work, which meant losing a full day's pay, but I figured it would be worth it to make her birthday special. I started planning this thing like I was organizing a corporate event. We're talking about a real production here, not some half-assed get-together that you throw together at the last minute. I designed and printed custom invitations for 35 guests, making sure to include all her friends, family members, and even some people I didn't particularly like because they mattered to her. I decorated the entire place in her favorite rose gold and white color scheme, complete with elaborate balloon setups and a professional photo backdrop for all those Instagram pictures I knew she'd want to take. The decorations alone cost me $450, but I wanted everything to be absolutely perfect for her special day. I hired her favorite Mediterranean catering company for nearly $900 to handle all the food, ensuring we'd have high-quality dishes that would impress her guests. I even went as far as bringing in a professional bartender with a full setup for $350, not counting the alcohol I bought separately, which was another significant expense. I wanted every detail to be flawless, even inviting people I didn't enjoy spending time with because they were important to Victoria. The hardest decision was her birthday gift. She'd been talking for months about wanting to redecorate our bedroom, saying it felt too masculine and needed more feminine energy or whatever. So I found this local artist through Instagram who specializes in custom paintings, and I commissioned a piece specifically designed for above our bed. I showed the artist multiple pictures of Victoria, told her about Victoria's style preferences, her favorite colors, and the kind of vibe she was going for in the bedroom. The artist created this absolutely gorgeous abstract piece with flowers and gold accents that looked like something you'd see in a fancy boutique hotel. The painting cost me $900 and took 3 weeks to complete, but it was exactly what Victoria had been describing in her redecorating fantasies. The day of the party, I was running around like a maniac getting everything set up perfectly. I started at 7 a.m. moving furniture around to create more space in the living room and kitchen areas. I set up the bar area on my back patio, arranged all the decorations according to the color scheme, and made sure the playlist was the perfect mix of her favorite songs and music that would keep the party energy up throughout the evening. The catering company arrived at 4 p.m. to set up all their equipment and food stations, and the bartender showed up at 5 p.m. to get his station ready and start preparing. By 6 p.m., my house looked like something straight out of a magazine spread. Professional-level party setup that probably cost me close to $2,800 total when you factored in absolutely everything. Victoria spent most of the day at her old salon getting pampered. Hair, makeup, nails, the full treatment. Which I paid for, obviously, because what's another $220 on top of everything else I'd already spent? She looked absolutely stunning when she got home around 5:30 p.m., and for a brief moment, I actually felt good about the whole thing. Like maybe this elaborate celebration would be worth all the time, money, and effort I'd put into it. The party officially started at 7 p.m., and honestly, it was going amazingly well. Everyone showed up on time, people were absolutely raving about the setup, the Mediterranean food was incredible, and the bartender was killing it with creative drinks that had everyone impressed. Victoria was in her absolute element, taking pictures every 5 minutes, posting Instagram stories constantly, and playing the perfect birthday girl who was so grateful and surprised by everything. I was actually feeling pretty proud of myself and the event I'd managed to pull together. People kept coming up to me throughout the evening saying things like, "Dude, you really outdid yourself," and "Victoria is so lucky to have someone who does all this for her." Even her mother, who usually treats me like I'm not good enough for her precious daughter, was being unusually nice and thanking me for making the day so special. For a few hours, it felt like all the stress and expense had been worth it. Then, around 10 p.m., I went inside to grab more ice from the kitchen freezer. The caterers had used most of what I had stocked up, and the bartender was running low for the evening rush of drinks. That's when I heard voices coming from the spare bedroom down the hall. The door was cracked open slightly, and I could hear female voices talking in hushed tones. Now, I wasn't trying to eavesdrop or anything. I was just walking by with a bag of ice in my hands when I heard my name mentioned. So naturally, I stopped to listen. What guy wouldn't pause when he hears people discussing him at his own party? It was Victoria talking to her cousin Diana, who she's super close with. They talk like every single day, and Diana knows all of Victoria's business. her confidant and partner in crime for everything. I could hear them clearly through the cracked door, and they obviously thought they had complete privacy in that back room. "This party is absolutely incredible," Diana was saying enthusiastically. "I can't believe Marcus put all this together himself. The decorations, the catering, that gorgeous painting he commissioned. Everything is just perfect. You're so lucky to have someone who goes this far for you." And that's when Victoria said the words that ended our entire relationship in about 10 seconds flat. "Yeah, Marcus is nice and all, but he's just temporary, you know? Until I find someone better. He's not really the type of guy you see a future with." I literally froze in the hallway, holding that bag of ice like a statue. Just stood there completely motionless while my girlfriend casually discussed my expiration date at the birthday party I'd planned and paid for entirely by myself. In my own house, surrounded by decorations I'd bought and food I'd ordered. Diana laughed. Not a shocked laugh, but like an amused, "Oh, Victoria, there you go again," laugh that suggested this wasn't the first time they'd had this conversation. Then she said something like, "Well, at least he treats you well while you're figuring things out." "Oh, definitely," Victoria replied without missing a beat. "He's perfect for right now. Takes care of everything, doesn't pressure me about work, lets me focus on myself. But long term, I need someone more ambitious, someone who's going places." Then they started talking about some guy named Derek, who'd been sliding into her DMs on Instagram. Apparently, he works in finance, drives a BMW, and has an apartment downtown. They were laughing about his messages and how he keeps asking her out, discussing him like he was already a done deal. "Are you going to meet up with him?" Diana asked with obvious interest, like she was invested in Victoria's dating strategy. "Maybe after I figure out my exit strategy with Marcus," Victoria responded casually, as if she was discussing weekend plans. "I mean, I can't exactly afford my own place right now, and he's been so good about covering everything. It would be stupid to leave before I have something better lined up." I couldn't listen to any more of this conversation. I walked back to the kitchen in a complete daze, put the ice in the cooler like I was on autopilot, and spent the rest of the party playing the perfect host while my entire world crumbled around me. I smiled when people talked to me, made all the appropriate responses, acted like everything was completely fine, while internally processing the fact that I was being used and planning her departure strategy. The crazy part was watching Victoria for the rest of the night, knowing exactly what I just heard. She was all over me for the remainder of the party, thanking me constantly for making her birthday so special, posting couple pictures with captions about having the most amazing boyfriend ever, taking selfies with the custom painting I'd commissioned, and showing it off to everyone like she was so touched by the thoughtful gift. Meanwhile, I'm standing there knowing she sees me as nothing more than a temporary convenience until she can upgrade to someone better. Someone more ambitious than the guy who owns his own business and house and just dropped $2,800 on her birthday party. The party ended around midnight, and her friends were all hugging me goodbye, telling me what an incredible job I'd done and how lucky Victoria was to have me. If only they knew what she really thought about our relationship and my role in her life. The irony was almost unbearable. We did minimal cleanup before bed because I told her we could deal with the mess in the morning since she was tired from all the excitement and socializing. She was going on and on about how perfect everything had been, how she couldn't believe I'd done all this for her, how much she loved me and appreciated everything I did. I just nodded and smiled while being completely checked out, emotionally, because in my head, I was already planning her exit strategy. The same exit strategy she'd been discussing with Diana while I was getting ice for the party I'd thrown her. There's something about eavesdropping that people don't talk about enough. Sometimes you hear exactly what someone really thinks about you, and once you hear it, you can't unhear it. Those words were going to replay in my mind forever. But I stayed calm on the surface and made a plan for what needed to happen next. The next morning, Saturday, Victoria woke up around 11 a.m., still buzzing with excitement about the party. She kept going on about how amazing everything had been, showing me all the pictures and videos people had posted on social media, reading me comments about what a great boyfriend I was. The irony was absolutely incredible. People praising me for being such a devoted partner, while I knew she was already planning my replacement. Around noon, she announced her plans for the day with the casual entitlement I'd grown accustomed to. "Delilah and I are going out for birthday round 2, she declared. "Brunch downtown, then shopping, maybe hit a few bars later. You don't mind, do you, babe? It's kind of a girls' day thing." Delilah is her best friend, the one who enables all her worst behaviors and probably knew all about the Derek situation and Victoria's exit strategy plans. They were going to spend the day gossiping about guys and spending money they didn't earn while I stayed home like a good little provider. Sounds fun, I said with a smile. Have a great time. You're the best, she said, kissing me goodbye with what I now knew was complete insincerity. Love you. The second her car pulled out of my driveway, I called my crew lead and told him I was taking a personal day. Then I got to work on what I like to call Operation Fresh Start. First thing I did was grab every empty box I could find in the garage. I had a bunch left over from when I'd moved in 4 years ago, plus some Amazon delivery boxes I'd been meaning to recycle but never got around to. As I started going through the house, I quickly realized I needed way more containers than I'd initially thought. So I drove to U-Haul and bought about 25 moving boxes in different sizes, because this was going to be a much bigger operation than I'd anticipated. Then I went through the house systematically, room by room, packing up every single thing that belonged to her. And I mean absolutely everything. Clothes, shoes, jewelry, toiletries, makeup, hair products, those stupid decorative pillows she'd brought, the scented candles, her houseplants, all of it. I wasn't going to leave behind so much as a hair tie. You wouldn't believe how much stuff she'd accumulated in my house over a year and a half of living there. Her makeup collection alone filled 2 entire boxes completely. We're talking hundreds of dollars worth of products scattered across my bathroom counter like she'd claimed permanent residence in there. Foundation, concealer, 19 different lipsticks, multiple eyeshadow palettes, brushes, and tools I couldn't even identify. It was like clearing out a Sephora stockroom. I had no idea one person could own so many beauty products. I found stuff I'd completely forgotten she even owned while going through everything. A yoga mat that had never been unrolled since the day she brought it over, still in its original packaging. A juicer that was still in its box from some health kick that had lasted exactly 4 days before she gave up on it. Books she'd bought to improve herself, but had never opened, with the spines still uncracked. A whole drawer full of jewelry, including pieces I'd bought her for various occasions and holidays. I wasn't being vindictive about any of this process. I didn't throw anything away or damage her belongings out of spite. I just packed everything carefully and neatly, making sure nothing would get broken during transport. I even labeled each box clearly with what was inside. Victoria makeup, Victoria clothes, Victoria shoes, that kind of systematic organization. If anything, I was being more organized about her possessions than she'd ever been with her own stuff. The whole process took about 5 solid hours of work. By 4 p.m. I had everything boxed up and ready to go. 18 boxes total, stacked neatly by the front door like a well-organized moving operation. Then I did a final walkthrough of the entire house to make sure I hadn't missed anything or overlooked some hidden stash of her belongings. It was genuinely weird seeing the place without her stuff scattered everywhere. The bathroom counter was completely clear for the first time in months. The closet actually had space again instead of being crammed with her clothes. The bedroom wasn't covered in her outfits from trying on different combinations. For the first time in what felt like forever, my house actually looked like my house again. Not some shared space that had been taken over by someone else's lifestyle. While I was packing everything up, I'd been thinking about what to do with the custom painting I'd commissioned for her birthday. That $900 piece of art hanging above our bed that she'd been showing off to everyone at the party while secretly planning to dump me for some finance guy she'd been talking to online. I decided to leave it hanging up for now. Partly because I'd paid for it with my own money, but mostly because I wanted her to see it when she came home. I wanted her to remember that while she was calling me temporary to her cousin, I was spending my hard-earned money trying to make her happy and create something meaningful for our relationship. Now here's the thing about situations like this that most guys don't understand. Most men would have sent angry texts, blown up her phone with calls, maybe even tracked her down at whatever bar she was at to confront her in public and cause a scene. That's exactly what someone like Victoria would expect. Drama, emotion, begging, arguing, the whole messy breakup routine. But I'm not most guys. I run my own business, which means I deal with problems professionally and efficiently. When a client doesn't pay their bill, I don't argue with them or get emotional about it. I just stop providing service and move on to paying customers. When equipment breaks down, I don't get upset about the inconvenience. I replace it and keep working. This was just another business decision that needed to be handled cleanly. Victoria had made it crystal clear that I was a temporary solution until she found something better. Well, congratulations to her. Her temporary arrangement was officially being terminated. Around 6 p.m., I started wondering what time she'd be home from her day of celebration. Part of me was genuinely curious to see her reaction to what she'd find. But mostly I just wanted to get this conversation over with so I could move on with my life and put this whole situation behind me. Victoria rolled up around 8 p.m., and I heard her car pulling into the driveway, then the familiar jingle of keys at the front door. There was a pause, probably her brain processing what she was seeing. Then her voice, sharp and confused. "Why are there boxes everywhere?" I stayed on the couch, didn't even look up from the TV where I was watching a game. "That's your stuff," I said in the flattest tone possible. There was a beat of complete silence, then her footsteps moved quickly into the living room. "What? Why is it all packed?" she asked, standing in front of me like I'd just spoken in a completely different language. Her voice cracked a little, and she was using that fake sweet tone she always employed when she didn't know how much trouble she was actually in. That's when I dropped the bomb on her. "I heard what you said to Diana." Her face, man. I watched her expression go from confused to ghost white to full-blown panic in a matter of seconds. I could literally see her brain scrambling to figure out damage control. "Wait, what? That wasn't—" "I didn't mean it like that," she stammered. "It was just girl talk. You know how Diana always brings out the worst in me. I say stupid things when I'm around her." Her voice was speeding up like she was trying to outrun the truth that was catching up to her. "You said I was temporary," I cut in before she could spin this further. "In my house, at the party I planned and paid for entirely, while wearing the necklace I gave you for our 6-month anniversary." She physically shrank back like each word was another nail in the coffin of our relationship. Then the tears started flowing, right on cue. "I love you, Marcus, I swear I do," she said, with her voice breaking dramatically. "I just get insecure sometimes and say stupid things to sound cool in front of my cousin. I didn't mean any of it, I promise. You know how much you mean to me. 6 months ago, I probably would have bought that performance hook, line, and sinker. But I wasn't in the business of handing out second chances to people who saw me as a placeholder anymore. When the waterworks didn't work, she flipped the script completely. "Wow, you're seriously being controlling right now?" she said, her tone shifting to accusatory. "This is such an overreaction to one stupid comment. Are you just looking for an excuse to break up with me? Because this is insane." Then came the threats and desperate bargaining. "You can't just kick me out like this," she declared with false bravado. "I live here too. We've been together for 2 years. I finally looked her dead in the eye and laid out the reality of her situation. "No, you don't live here," I said calmly. "You moved into my house. My name's on the deed, the mortgage is paid off, and everything here belongs to me. You're not a tenant, Victoria. You've been a guest this entire time, and guests don't get squat when they wear out their welcome." And just like that, I watched her face as the reality of her situation hit her like a freight train. She'd been so comfortable in her setup, so confident in her ability to use me as a safety net while she shopped around for something better, that she'd forgotten she had absolutely zero legal rights to be in my house. Then came the bargaining phase, and she pulled out all the stops. Promises to get a job immediately, swearing she'd change everything about herself, begging for another chance to prove she was worthy of my support. She tried everything from declaring her undying love to threatening suicide if I threw her out. The emotional manipulation playbook got completely exhausted in about 25 minutes of increasingly desperate attempts. I gave her until 9 p.m. to load up her car and leave, or everything was going straight to the curb for the garbage collectors to pick up in the morning. That's when the real ugly side of her personality came out in full force. She called me heartless and vindictive, said I'd regret this decision for the rest of my life, told me I'd never find anyone as good as her because I was just a low-life tradesman who didn't deserve someone of her caliber. The mask completely slipped off, and I got to see who she really was underneath all that sweet girlfriend act she'd been performing. She loaded her car with as many boxes as would physically fit, cursing me out the entire time during the process. She had to make 4 separate trips because apparently someone who doesn't work for 4 months can still accumulate an impressive amount of possessions. Each trip back to grab more boxes, she got progressively angrier, probably because the reality was finally sinking in that this was actually happening and her free ride was officially over. The funniest part was watching her try to figure out the logistics in real time. Where was she going to go? Her parents' place was a good hour-and-a-half drive from here, and she'd burned bridges with most of her friends by borrowing money she never paid back or overstaying her welcome at their places. The reality of being a 26-year-old woman with no job, no savings, and no backup plan was hitting her like a ton of bricks. During the second trip, she tried one more manipulation angle, switching back to the sweet, reasonable girlfriend persona. She started talking about how good we were together, all the wonderful memories we'd made over 2 years, how we could work through this if I would just calm down and think rationally. Like I was the one being irrational for not wanting to date someone who saw me as a temporary placeholder while she shopped for my replacement. By the time she was loading the last boxes into her overstuffed car, the anger had shifted to this weird combination of acceptance mixed with deep resentment. She kept muttering things under her breath about how I'd changed, how I wasn't the man she fell in love with, how I was showing my true colors by being so cruel and heartless. The irony was absolutely incredible. I was showing my true colors by not letting her walk all over me anymore. The final moment was almost anticlimactic after all the drama and emotional manipulation. She stood by her packed car, looking back at my house like she was seeing it for the first time, maybe finally realizing what she'd actually lost. Not just a boyfriend, but a completely subsidized lifestyle that let her do whatever she wanted without any real consequences or responsibilities. She tried one last guilt trip, her voice trembling just enough to sound pitiful and desperate. "I can't go back to my parents' place, Marcus. I'm almost 30. Do you know how humiliating that is for someone my age?" I didn't even flinch at the emotional manipulation attempt. I just looked at her calmly and said, "Maybe next time don't trash the person who's keeping a roof over your head." Then she grabbed her keys, stormed off to her car, and drove away without another word, probably already calling Diana or someone else to complain about how terribly I'd treated her. I went back inside and did a final check to make sure she hadn't forgotten anything important or taken something that wasn't actually hers. The house felt completely different immediately. Quieter, cleaner, more peaceful. It was like this oppressive energy that had been building for months just vanished into thin air. For the first time in what felt like forever, my space felt like my own again. That night, I called my locksmith buddy who owed me a favor from when I'd done some electrical work at his shop for cost. He came over around 10 p.m. and changed all the locks on every entrance, including the garage door. The whole process took him about an hour, and he didn't ask any questions about why I needed it done so urgently. He just handed me the new keys and said he hoped things worked out for me. By the time I went to bed, it was like Victoria had never lived there at all. Her scent was gone from the pillows, her products weren't cluttering up the bathroom counter, her clothes weren't scattered around the bedroom floor. For the first time in months, I had my space completely back to myself. I slept better that night than I had in weeks. No one hogging the covers, no one's alarm going off at random times, no one sighing dramatically when I got up early for work. Just peaceful, uninterrupted sleep in my own bed. But the peace and quiet didn't last very long because apparently when you cut off someone's meal ticket, they don't just quietly accept the new reality and move on with their lives. They launch a full-scale campaign to try and guilt, manipulate, or harass their way back into the situation they lost. Sunday afternoon, my phone started lighting up like a Christmas tree. Text after text, call after call, all from Victoria's number in rapid succession. The progression was pretty predictable if you understand basic manipulation psychology. It started with pure desperation, moved to anger and accusations, then circled back to desperation with some heavy guilt-tripping mixed in for good measure. The messages were honestly a masterclass in manipulation tactics. The first batch was all apologies and promises to change her entire life. How sorry she was for everything. How she'd get a job first thing tomorrow morning. How she'd never take me for granted again. How she'd be the perfect girlfriend if I'd just give her one more chance. Real tearjerker stuff that might have worked on some poor sucker who hadn't heard her real opinion of him while she was planning his replacement. When I didn't respond to the apology to her after several hours, she shifted gears completely to pure anger and personal attacks. Suddenly, I was immature and heartless, throwing away 2 years of a beautiful relationship over one stupid comment that didn't mean anything. She was amazed at how I could be so vindictive and cruel, destroying everything we'd built together over a misunderstanding. It's incredible how quickly someone goes from begging for forgiveness to attacking your character when they realize the guilt trip isn't working on you anymore. The best messages were the threats about how I'd regret this decision for the rest of my life, how I'd never find anyone better than her, how she was the best thing that had ever happened to me, how I'd be crawling back on my hands and knees begging her to take me back within a month. The delusion was genuinely impressive. This is coming from someone who had spent 4 months doing absolutely nothing productive while I paid for everything and handled all adult responsibilities. By evening, I'd had enough entertainment value from her increasingly unhinged messages, and I blocked her number completely. Peace restored, problem solved. Or at least, that's what I naively thought at the time. Monday morning, I'm getting ready for work like any normal day when my phone starts buzzing with notifications from Instagram, Facebook, and even LinkedIn of all platforms. Somehow, Victoria had apparently spent her entire night creating new accounts and messaging me from every social media platform she could think of. The dedication to harassment was almost admirable in its thoroughness. It was the same exact pattern as the text messages. Begging, anger, more begging, back to threats, rinse, and repeat. She'd screenshot our old photos together and send them with captions about how happy we used to be, sharing memories about trips we'd taken or things we'd done together, trying to make me nostalgic for the good times we'd shared. What she didn't seem to understand was that those good times were built on a complete lie. I thought I was dating someone who genuinely cared about me and saw a real future together. Turns out I was just funding someone's extended vacation from adult responsibilities while she shopped around for my replacement on dating apps. I blocked her on every single platform I could think of. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, even LinkedIn, where she'd somehow found my professional profile. I thought I'd finally achieved some peace and quiet again, or at least that's what I hoped. Tuesday evening, I get a call from a number I didn't recognize. I figured it might be work-related since I'd been bidding on some new commercial electrical projects that week. I answer the phone expecting to talk business, and instead I hear a very familiar voice. It was Diana, Victoria's cousin and partner in crime. Diana wanted to play mediator and help us work things out like adults. Apparently, Victoria had been staying with her parents since I'd kicked her out, and she was absolutely miserable living under their roof again. The poor little princess wasn't used to having rules and responsibilities after months of living consequence-free in my house like it was her personal resort. According to Diana's sob story, Victoria was really, truly sorry and had learned her lesson about taking good men for granted. She wanted to have an adult conversation to talk things through and explain what she'd really meant by those comments. Diana tried every manipulation angle in the book. How hurt and devastated Victoria was. How she'd never meant what she said to be taken seriously. How healthy relationships require forgiveness and compromise from both partners. Look, I know what she said was wrong, Diana admitted reluctantly. But she's been crying nonstop since Saturday night and just wants a chance to explain herself properly. Can't you at least hear her out? That's what mature adults do. I let Diana talk for a few minutes, laying out her entire case for why I should give Victoria another chance, before I pointed out some basic facts that she seemed to have conveniently overlooked. Like how Victoria had been living rent-free in my house for months while planning to dump me for someone with more money. Or how she'd been discussing exit strategies and potential replacement boyfriends at the birthday party I'd organized and paid for entirely myself. Then Diana tried the classic, "Girls say things they don't mean when they're frustrated and venting" excuse. Like I should just ignore what Victoria really thought about me deep down and pretend everything was fine for the sake of maintaining the relationship. That sounded like a fantastic recipe for a healthy, long-term partnership built on mutual respect and honesty. The conversation ended when I told Diana that if Victoria had something meaningful to say to me, she could have said it before I heard her casually discussing my expiration date while she was flirting with Derek from Instagram. I blocked Diana's number immediately after hanging up and thought that would finally be the end of this harassment campaign. Once again, I was completely wrong about that assumption. Thursday afternoon, I'm on a job site rewiring an office building downtown when my phone rings. Another unknown number that I didn't recognize. But this time when I answered, it was Victoria's father on the other end. I'd never particularly liked the guy. He'd always acted like his precious daughter was slumming it by dating a tradesman instead of some college-educated office worker with a fancy corporate title. He tried the man-to-man approach first, talking about how I was being immature and should work through our problems like an adult instead of running away from the relationship. Like I was the one who had created this entire situation by having standards and self-respect instead of being a doormat. When the reasonable approach didn't get him anywhere, he brought out the heavy artillery. How absolutely devastated Victoria was by my cruel treatment. How she'd learned from her mistakes and grown as a person. How I was being unreasonable and vindictive by refusing to forgive her for one little comment. It was the same exact script that everyone else had been using, just delivered by someone with more authority in Victoria's family hierarchy. I explained the situation from my perspective. 4 months of financially supporting someone who saw me as temporary, overhearing her discuss exit strategies at the party I'd organized, the complete lack of appreciation for everything I'd done for her. He didn't want to hear any of that factual information. He just kept insisting that I was overreacting to one insignificant comment that didn't reflect her true feelings. Then, Victoria's mother got on the phone, and the emotional manipulation went into full overdrive. She started talking about her little girl, who was crying herself to sleep every night. How could I be so heartless and cruel to someone who loved me? Didn't I care about Victoria's feelings and emotional well-being? Couldn't I find it in my heart to forgive her for this one mistake? I pointed out that their daughter had been living rent-free in my house for months, while actively planning to dump me for someone with more money and status. Maybe they should be asking themselves why they raise someone who thinks using people for financial support is acceptable behavior in a relationship. That's when the conversation took a really ugly turn. Suddenly, I was being dramatic and vindictive for having basic boundaries and self-respect. They couldn't understand why I wouldn't just forgive and forget like a good little doormat who knows his place. They started getting defensive about their precious daughter and how she was the real victim in this entire situation. The final straw was when her father accused me of destroying a young woman's life over my fragile male ego. Like I was supposed to thank Victoria for the privilege of being her temporary financial provider, while she looked for an upgrade to someone more ambitious. I told them both exactly what I thought of their parenting skills and their daughter's character, then hung up the phone. I blocked both their numbers immediately afterward. If they wanted to enable their 26-year-old daughter's victim mentality and refusal to take responsibility for her actions, they could do it without involving me in their dysfunction. The next few weeks were blissfully quiet and peaceful. No more phone calls, no more text messages, no more intervention attempts from family members and friends trying to fight Victoria's battles for her. She had apparently exhausted her entire support network's willingness to get involved in her personal drama and manipulation campaigns. Life started getting back to normal pretty quickly after that. My house stayed consistently clean and organized, and I had my evenings and weekends completely back to myself. I started picking up some hobbies that I'd neglected during the months I was playing house with Princess Victoria. I hung out with friends I hadn't seen much of while I was constantly dealing with her mood swings and demands for attention. The best part was getting my mental energy back. I wasn't constantly stressed about coming home to complete chaos and messes everywhere. I wasn't walking on eggshells around someone's unpredictable emotional reactions to basic adult responsibilities. I wasn't working overtime and weekends to support someone who didn't appreciate the sacrifices I was making for our relationship. It was just peaceful, drama-free living in my own space, exactly the way I'd had it before she moved in. About a month later, I heard through some mutual acquaintances that Victoria had moved back in with her parents permanently and was still taking time to figure things out. Apparently, she never did get her job back at the salon after all, because her extended break had lasted way too long for them to hold her position. Some people never learn from their mistakes, I guess. Her parents were apparently covering all her expenses now, so she'd just transferred her freeloading operation to a new location with different financial providers. The princess had found herself a new castle with people willing to subsidize her lifestyle while she continued avoiding any real adult responsibilities. I started dating again after a few months had passed. Nothing too serious at first. I was just getting back out there and remembering what it was like to spend time with someone who actually appreciated my company and didn't see me as a temporary convenience. The difference was absolutely incredible compared to what I'd been dealing with. I went on dates with women who thanked me for planning interesting activities and choosing nice restaurants, who offered to split the check instead of automatically expecting me to pay for everything, who had their own careers and interests and hobbies that they were passionate about, who didn't spend the entire evening talking about themselves and their problems while showing zero interest in my life or experiences. Looking back now, I'm genuinely grateful for that birthday party conversation that I accidentally overheard. If I hadn't been in the right place at the right time to hear Victoria's real feelings about me and our relationship, I might have wasted years of my life with someone who saw me as nothing more than a stepping stone to something better. Instead, I got my life back and learned to value myself enough not to accept being someone's plan B while they shopped around for plan A. Sometimes the trash really does take itself out. You just have to be smart enough to leave it on the curb where it belongs instead of bringing it back inside your house.